But GOP Senator apologized sarcastically for her comments at a recent town hall. Joining me now, CNN entertainment reporter Lisa Respers France, Madeline Simmons, attorney and partner with Stuart Miller Simmons, and Alex Sands, a fellow at the Poynter Institute. Good to have you all in this morning. All right, so this is Republican Senator Joni Ernst. On Friday, she had a town hall in which she was discussing Medicaid reform. There were concerns from the audience about SNAP benefit cuts, and someone shouted out, "People will die." She replied, "Well, we're all going to die," and she's been ridiculed for that. She posted on social media this apology. Let's watch.
I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely apologize for a statement that I made yesterday at my town hall. I made an incorrect assumption that everyone in the auditorium understood that, yes, we are all going to perish from this earth. So I apologize. And I'm really, really glad that I did not have to bring up the subject of the tooth fairy as well.
So that was her apology. Why can't you just say, "I'm sorry," and leave it at that? Is that out of fashion now, just to apologize and move on?
I mean, the words are important, but I think in this time that we're in, and if we step back, what we saw happen is no different than what we've seen for months at many of these town halls. And while the answer is what we're talking about this morning, it's really the step back and how uncertain people feel about the change happening around them across the country, whether it's specifically the impact on Medicaid, on some of these benefits. We talk about the earlier conversations we've had about the institutions and how they're changing, how it's impacting people in very real ways every day. I think that's what's this reflecting of. It's happening in cities across the country. People are afraid in many cases, and that's what's getting us to this conversation today.
I think that some of these politicians are underestimating how angry people are and how upset people are. So, I love that you started with apology because it came off incredibly snarky. It was not funny. And I think there's a disconnect in that some of these politicians think that everyone thinks like they do and everyone agrees with them so that they can have a little fun with it. But you can't have fun with the fact that many people do believe that folks are going to die because of some of these cuts. There's nothing funny about that. So coming with a sarcastic apology, I do not think is helpful in this moment. It absolutely didn't meet the moment, but I think it just further inflames people and just makes them more upset.
Yeah, I agree with you there. People are struggling across the nation. They're complaining, rightfully so, to elected leaders at municipal levels all the way up to the federal level about being able to put groceries on the table and being able to afford their regular day-to-day expenses. So when you hear a leader, a politician respond to people in the audience that are expressing real concern about how this will continue to impact them and their families, it's disheartening.
Yeah. You think this fades in a day or two?
We move on quickly.
Yeah.
That does not mean that people won't feel the impacts of this. When we think about the actual benefits, we have ideas of what we think that means, as we've talked about with Washington, this big, broad, all these powers. But at the very personal level, for a lot of families, for individuals who need this care, whether it's a senior citizen, someone who's disabled, these have real impacts for them. And people across the country are waking up today wondering, will this change next week? What happens if, in just a few weeks, I lose these benefits?
President Trump's massive agenda is on the line when the Senate returns this week. He posted on Truth Social overnight, calling on the Senate to pass his so-called Big Beautiful Bill. But GOP senators are at sharp odds on how to proceed, with some calling for deeper spending cuts and others fearful about the impact on the social safety net. While many Republicans avoided town halls during last week's recess, the ones who did hold them got an earful.
People are not, well, we all are going to die.
I received overwhelmingly positive feedback about the work that DOJ is doing, and
I voted for that bill.
All right, so Joni Ernst, the Iowa senator who said we all are going to die, was responding to concerns over some of the Medicaid cuts and the cuts to the food stamp program that were included as part of the House bill. Just to look on your screen how significant of a pullback it would be if that bill were to become law. And then her Democratic opponent, who was in the crowd when he heard her remarks, called her comment a, quote, jaw-dropping moment. That was from Nathan Sage to the New York Times. And then amid all of this, Joni Ernst taped this video from a cemetery.
I made an incorrect assumption that everyone in the auditorium understood that, yes, we are all going to perish from this earth. So I apologize. And I'm really, really glad that I did not have to bring up the subject of the tooth fairy as well.
It is fascinating. I think in this era of Trump, the idea now is never apologize, never back down. If you do apologize, you're going to lose the support of your base because they want you to be a fighter. And look, the people who disliked you, the people who were in that audience, were never going to vote for you anyway. And then just hope that it sort of blows over at the end of the day. But that it's interesting. Those of us who remember the 2014 race when she was first elected will
With
recall
the pig, the pork.
it was the pig in the pork. But remember, her opponent really got himself in trouble because her Democratic opponent by mocking then Senator Grassley as saying, you know what? He's just a farmer. He's not a lawyer. What does he know? And she used that to great benefit by saying, who does this guy think he is that he calls people who don't have a law degree lesser? And so it sort of feels like a full circle moment, right? Which is mocking this idea while also hoping that in this new era, that works.
Successful tactic?
I don't know. It felt a little tortured to me. Like, I'm not sure. And by the way, if you watch the full clip, in the town hall, she understands the importance of Medicaid in Iowa, and she goes on to say, like, I'm just talking about people who shouldn't be eligible not getting this, but those that are eligible, Medicaid's really important in Iowa. And so she has that and yet that's nowhere in her response to your explanation.
Yeah.
So just being sarcastic, the fact that Democrats seized on this line of hers without actually getting to the broader defense, I think is also a mistake on her part.
I mean, meantime, the Senate comes back this week. They're going to try to put together this bill. There's a lot of debate and division over the House-passed bill, over whether it was too much in spending cuts, whether it was not enough in spending cuts, whether the fact that the Congressional Budget Office says it could blow up the federal deficit. These are the members who are currently opposed at the moment. There are at least 4 of them who have said they're opposed to the House bill. Others, many are raising different levels of concern. We just have 6 on the screen, but there are far more than that. How do you see Trump dealing with this at this moment? And what do you think? You've seen these big legislative packages and these big fights happen in other Congresses. How complicated is this going to be to get this across the finish line?
Well, I mean, it's going to be hugely complicated. But I think push forward to the end of the day, it will be shocking if they don't pass this. They have to pass this. Yep. The Speaker has said failure is not an option.
Yep.
So one way or another, they're going to put together in the Senate a version of it. It will go back to the House. Everybody is going to have to take a deep breath, hold hands and walk off the ledge together. But they will do it. But then they are going to be vulnerable to what's in the bill.
Yes.
And it's all of the things that they're talking about in the Senate. Not enough cuts for people who think that there ought to be more cuts. Too many cuts for people who say the safety net's going to be shredded. And what about that deficit issue that the Republicans used to care about? So there's all of that's going to be what they come out with. So it's going to be a tortured process. You're going to keep us up to date with it minute by minute. But you have to assume that in the end, Trump will push hard to make sure they get it.
But they'll have a sales job.
Yes, they'll have a sales job, and they're trying to make something that is too big to fail for the GOP. We'll see what ultimately happens.